happy Sunday. Welcome back to Renew Your Soul. I am Isla, your host, and I'm so excited to have you here today for my first official interview on Renew Your Soul in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month. I'm going to have a friend of mine, Leisly, on the podcast today. She is a writer, the author of Living in Phases, a really beautiful poetry collection that you can purchase on her page, and you will find out all of that information in just a bit. And she is someone who experiences and has been diagnosed with OCD for a few years now, and she talks all about that journey today. Here is my conversation with Leisly. Thank you, Leisly, for being here. Leisly is a very dear friend to me. I met her last year in 2022 as I was starting my Alegria publishing journey. I've shared on my podcast before, I am in the process of finishing a book, and it's being published through a local Latina publisher here in the Los Angeles area. And this is where I met my dear friend, Leisly. I'm so happy to have you here today. And, the theme of this month was Mental Health Awareness Month. And we have heard from so many people around the world be open about their own journeys and talking about the ways how they take care of their mind, how they are open about what is going on with their minds. And so I'm so happy to have Leisly here today. I'm going to ask you, Leisly, just share us a little more about your background. If you don't mind sharing your age, where you're from.
First of all, hello, my girl. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so flattered you asked me to do this, so this is exciting. Yeah, so my name is Leisly, or Leisly Ann. That's kind of my pen name. I'm 27. I'm born and raised in New York City, where I still am now. And yeah, I did meet Isla, the lovely host of this podcast, through Alegria. We were both working on our books together. I actually just finished mine, and I published it in March, called Living in Phases. It's bilingual. My parents and I are Dominican American, so there's a little bit of Spanish in there for you all. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here and talk to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So yes, she's joining us from the beautiful state on the East Coast of New York. And I have to go visit her very, very, very soon. Okay, so tell me a little bit about how old were you and where were you when you first were diagnosed with OCD?
Yeah, so OCD, for anyone, I'm sure most people have heard of it or know of it. It's obsessive compulsive disorder. It's an anxiety-related disorder, so for most, well, I would say for almost everyone, although it presents differently, it's comorbid, which means like more than one diagnosis with another anxiety disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, phobias, social anxiety, which is what I was also diagnosed with, social anxiety and OCD. It was, I want to say I had seen signs in me for like a long time, really before I knew what OCD was. So I, like thinking back, I would think, wow, so that's why I did that, or that's why I felt that. But I didn't actually get a diagnosis until 2017, which is also when I first started therapy. I was doing psychotherapy at the time, and it was good. I had a really great therapist who I actually talk about in my book. I dedicated part of like my acknowledgments or like gratitude page to her. She did so much for me.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, she's great. While we worked together. So, but it was hard. I will say that it was not. I'm open about it now. I'm accepting of it now. But I will say, and you'll see, like, if you do read the beginning portions of my book, I did not agree with that diagnosis at all. It was 2017, and I was going through a lot, professionally within my family as well. And so it was my first time seeing a psychiatrist, my first time in a psychiatrist's office, my first time asking to get any kind of diagnosis.
Wow.
And he came with OCD, and like immediately I was like, that's wrong. Like, I see it. I see what you're saying, but like it's I personally thought it was more anxiety and depression. Mm-hmm. I was like, but like, I didn't fight him, but I went into that office expecting something totally different. And when I got that, I was almost like, well, this is this doesn't satisfy me. Like, this can't be it, you know?
Totally.
So it was a very like frustrating time. And he was also like not the greatest psychiatrist either. He said some like inappropriate things that made me think even more like, no, this is not what it is. I remember I was in the middle of my undergrad, career in school. I went to Hunter for psychology. So it wasn't my first time or experience learning about these things or talking about these things, but it was definitely my first time being diagnosed with anything. So it was like a pretty eye-opening time, even though it's what I wanted, like I wanted to see someone and get some answers. When I got them, it didn't feel like I had hoped it would.
Got it. So this was in 2017. Remind me of your age in that year.
Oh, Jesus. That was 6 years ago. So I was 21.
21. Wow. Leisly.
Yeah, 21. Yeah, because that was like towards like the holiday season and my birthday's in March. So yeah.
This is a similar story to a lot of other people who you hear and who I have heard of. They get a diagnosis, and that is a diagnosis that they either don't agree with, they don't know too much about, or they thought that it would be something different, right? It's like there's so many different ways that can go about when you're in that office and you leave, and now you're entering this world with this new sort of identity, this new part of you. They're telling you that this is your diagnosis. When you left, so I'm assuming this was happening in a meeting. Okay.
Yeah.
When you left, how did you feel walking out? And in those next couple of weeks, did you feel like they gave you sort of a way to go about dealing with this, or did you feel more alone than you did before?
Honestly, I mean, I honestly left that office kind of in tears. Like I just felt very, and it wasn't like I didn't mean for it to be like for someone looking, on the outside. I didn't mean for it to be like, oh, like what an embarrassing diagnosis, or like, oh, what like a shameful thing. It felt, I personally at least felt like there were issues that I was going through that were being overlooked, right? Which is why I didn't like I told, I totally understood why, they saw those tendencies in me because I saw them as well.
Got it.
I just didn't think it was what needed to be focused on. Like I said, I was in a very low state of mind in 2017. I had I was in a really like toxic work environment. I was doing great in school. I was doing my undergrad, right? It was the first time that I was working full time and going to school full time. So I just had a lot of new things happening for me.
Yeah.
That were coming my way that I really didn't know how to cope with, right? And aside from it being my first time being in therapy, I was also the first person in my family to go to therapy, right? So I was really just like really kind of like going out on the limb here, and I already kind of felt kind of like outcasted, right? Like a little bit like, oh, my family, had their own issues and they handled it their own ways. And like, I still had that mindset. I'm grateful that I moved way past that, obviously.
Totally.
But at the time it was like, all right, well, I'm already doing something, tough enough. Now I feel like I'm seeing these professionals and they don't really even get me, right? Like they're just throwing this diagnosis at me and it's like not what I want to focus on. So, when I left, I was grateful that I like spoke with someone and I heard them out. I heard their reasoning. I heard their explanations. I did get, it kind of motivated me to get more information,
Absolutely.
But I did leave feeling disheartened. I did leave feeling like, okay, I don't really think that like, not that it went the way that it didn't go the way I wanted it to go, like it has to go my way. It didn't, I'll be honest, like it just didn't go the way that I expected. Hard because I was really looking for some answers and something that would help. And I feel like that just gave me like something else to worry about, something like, else to be a part of your life, something else to navigate through the first time. And I really felt like I was going through what I was going through and I wasn't going to stop trying to work on that. But now I had to work on this too, which is just not what I mentioned. It wasn't what I went to the psychiatrist for, in plain terms.
So now at that time, you are diagnosed with OCD. You are in your undergraduate journey. You are also
Mm-hmm.
working. You're going through so much. You're trying to live as a young adult. How long after your initial diagnosis, when did you start feeling? Was it months after, weeks after, years after, where you felt like you could just move through life just a little bit easier, knowing what OCD is and why you had it? What it was in you that caused this to kind of happen in your life? Did you feel like it took a long time for you to get kind of a hold on things with this new diagnosis? Or did it take some time for it to settle in terms of tools and practices, and maybe you continue to see your therapist or someone in your life where you could talk openly about these things? Tell me a little bit about how soon after that initial diagnosis did things start actually settling in a little bit more, where you started feeling more hopeful with more answers?
I mean, it's funny because as I heard you like explaining the question, I was planning my answer as one does, as I do.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing that came to mind is I don't feel like that now. Like I don't feel like I have a grip now. I don't know that I have answers now. I don't feel like I've settled in. I can say that I'm more educated. I'm
Totally.
more accepting. I will not argue. I'll actually like correct people, if they say I don't have it. No, this is how I how I've learned kind of to like navigate the world. I will say that things got easier, unfortunately and fortunately, when I switched therapists. So my very first therapist, who I love, who again I dedicated part of my book to, she actually discontinued with me after we worked together for I want to say like 2 years and change, a very long time. And I wish I was still working with her, but she's a psychotherapist. She had very many
Psychotherapist.
specialties.
Got it.
Yeah, she's a psychotherapist. She had very many specialties. I picked her specifically, or I requested her when I like did intake and tried to work with that company for therapy because of her specialties and her background and things like that. Like I thought we would make a good fit, and I got lucky, because we did build a connection really quickly. But she, after some time, obviously, actually discontinued with me because she noticed, what I was going through, what I would disclose with her, to her, my symptoms, just like my thinking patterns. Just she noticed that she did not specialize in what I needed, and she said she'd like, ethically, like I can't continue to work with you because you need you need an OCD specialist. And I was like, no. Like I have, you have specialties and I picked you for those specialties and I'm still going through this and I'm still going through that. And like, I can work on that on my own. Like, it's not like we're here wasting time talking about flowers, like I was like, no. And she was like, no, and thinking like now, especially now working where I work, and we do a lot of we work with a lot of clinicians, and my background is in forensic psychology and psychology. Like I know what she was doing was right. It's just so different when it's you. Like when you're the person that it's happening to, where you're just like, we can put that aside, like I won't tell, you won't tell. But yeah, after she discontinued treatment with me, I had to go and find someone else, which I didn't for a while because I was very stubborn and sad and I just didn't want to start over.
Heartbroken to an extent too, because it's a relationship.
Yeah, in a way, because it was it was a really great, it was just a very like comfortable relationship. And for me particularly, like, not speaking for everyone, for me it's very difficult to be comfortable enough to talk about certain things with people.
Totally.
I'm very open, if you ask me, and I'm comfortable, I'll tell you, but like to talk about OCD especially, which is a very like this is a disorder that's kind of like embedded with shame and guilt and embarrassment for various reasons. Anybody that has it will tell you that. And through treatment, you've got to get better at it, more accepting, find ways to cope and stuff. But this was the beginning of my journey with it. So I was not really looking to talk to anybody else about stuff I already talked about. But when I met my next therapist, like a year or so later, she was an OCD specialist. She practiced ERP, which is exposure response therapy.
Yes.
Or exposure response prevention therapy. So, which is like the gold standard for OCD. So it's why I started working with her, and she really kind of helped me get a better handle on a lot of things.
Wow.
That I really needed help with. We weren't able to work together for too long, unfortunately, but she did do a lot for me as well. And I'm grateful because I myself was not the best patient. I was very stubborn. I hate ERP because naturally it makes you anxious. I'm trying to avoid. And I absolutely hated it in the beginning, but I wouldn't lie, and it was actually very helpful. So I think, I was diagnosed in 2017. I didn't start therapy with her until last year. Or no, the year before that.
So 2021.
So it took a good 5 or so years for me to find the kind of therapy and
that
the
you
kind
needed.
of provider that I really needed.
Absolutely. Thank you for just being so open and honest about your journey. I feel conversations like these are so needed for someone like myself who doesn't have this, right? And people out there who don't have it, but also OCD, we both know it. It's so easily thrown out. People are like, oh, I have OCD, I like my cups, like all whatever, right?
Yes.
It's just thrown out so it's
very easy. It's very easy to turn it into an adjective, which is such a disheartening and discrediting thing.
Absolutely. When there are people like yourself who have it. When you mentioned that you really had a great connection with your first psychotherapist, I believe is what you said.
Mm-hmm.
Have you spoken to her? Because now, you're a published author, and you, which we'll get into right now, Leisly has a beautiful book. If you are interested in reading about poetry on mental health and just her beautiful journey, her book is called Living in Phases. And she published it earlier this year, again through Alegria Publishing. And she mentioned just now that she, dedicated a portion of it to that first psychotherapist that really helped her. Have you given her this book, Leisly? I'm interested.
I actually haven't. I have not. I did speak with her a little bit after we discontinued services together. But I haven't. I have been. It's funny you asked that. I have been meaning to reach out to her. Hopefully, her email is still the same.
Yes.
But
oh my goodness,
it would be nice to hear from her. Because,
totally.
Yeah, she was really great.
So Leisly, talk to us a little bit about the book. Again, her book is called Living in Phases. It is a poetry book. It is beautiful. I'm halfway through. I haven't finished because I like to pick things up right when I'm in the mood. Sometimes I don't really finish a book in a week or a couple days. I like to have it with me, and open it when I feel like my soul needs it, in my morning routine or right before I go to bed. So tell me a little bit about your book. How has writing this helped heal you in any way? Your mind, your heart, your soul, and also in regards to your OCD. I know because she talks about this again in her book.
It's been wonderful. I had worked on that book since 2020, and it started as something totally different. It actually started where I told myself I used to write poetry a lot. When I was in high school, when I was in middle school, when I got to college. What happens with a lot of people is I got very into my studies. I was always a very academically focused person, right? So, now I'm in college and I'm really trying to do big things, and I mainly focused on school, right? So I, reading for pleasure, writing for pleasure, that kind of took a back seat. I wouldn't even say I always wrote poetry. No, I didn't. I didn't for years. It was not something that I went to or leaned on, which I think now is totally different, totally the opposite. So in 2020, I, for some reason, I got this idea in my head, and I was like, you know what, I want to get back into poetry. I want to get back into writing. I love writing. And I told myself, I was I'm going to start small. and to me, small, is I'm going to write one poem a day. And that'll be 365 poems. And then after that, I'm going to reread them and edit it. And I'm going to turn it into a book of 365 poems. I was thinking of like clever titles and things like that. And I was like, yeah, this one will do this. That didn't happen. I think I made it to like April. And then like I stopped for a few months and I was like, oh, damn, now I'm behind. And I'm like scurrying to write, like catch up. Basically, obviously that did not happen. I cannot keep up with my own endeavor. But I wrote, right? Like I didn't write 365 poems, but I wrote like 200 something.
Totally.
And I was like, wow, like I can, like some of them, I was like, wow, I really can still write. Like I actually like some of these, right? And then I found the next year I like it again. Mm-hmm. And I had obviously some material that, you know, that I had worked on the year before that. And then during last year, I wrote new things and worked on my writing and changed up my writing style. And fast forward now, like I put it all together and it became moving in phases. So this book, my debut collection that I have now, is not what I planned. It's definitely not anything. I never thought I'd have a book at like 27. It just wasn't something that was in my plans, you know? My plans were like undergrad, grad school, work, travel, you know, maybe something here or there. But so, you know, this is what came of kind of wanting to get back to some of the things that I really enjoyed when I wasn't so consumed with like mental health issues and school and this and that. So writing, you know, that book for me, rereading it, talking about it with people, it's very healing for me. I'm now in this stage that I'm in, writing is like it's become again one of my like real passions and one of my go-tos when I need kind of like to catharsis, right? Like it's very cathartic for me. It's one of the, again, I have, you know, pretty, if you know me, like you will notice it. Like I have pretty significant social anxiety. I'm really not good at speaking in engagements.
She is a beautiful speaker. It comes, you know, it's very hard sometimes to just, you know what we have inside, but it comes very natural, Leisly. You're a very natural speaker. I saw her speak to the people that were buying the books, and it was just such a wonderful experience. I didn't mean to cut you off, Leisly, but, you know, seeing that firsthand, being part of the class with Leisly, I am finishing up mine now. Leisly finished hers a few months ago, and she is published. She has her book. Like, I have it in front of me, you know? And I really just loved to hear how this came about, the backstory. Leisly has told me before, but hearing it again, it brings so much warmth to me, to my soul, just to even know you as a person and as a human and as a soul. You're so giving and you're so authentic, and her story is beautiful, and she's so open. And that is why I invited her here, because you are open about your journey. And she's very open on social, and she talks about, you know, her OCD. She shares pages where you can get tips and where people who might not even know about it can learn about it. And she has been sharing about it all throughout Mental Health Awareness Month. I'm so proud of you, Leisly. This is very near and dear to my heart, because I just think that being vulnerable and open about something as beautiful as this, is, you know, honest and in her life, can be a very difficult thing to do. And in this book, if you are interested in reading more too, you can purchase it on Leisly's page, I believe, and you can hear more about her story there too.
I love your words. Yeah, so writing for me has just always been easier. You know, I was always that kid, I mean, in school, that would prefer to write a paper than take a multiple choice question. You know, I'd rather like write essays than do any type of like math work. Like it was just, writing for me just, you know, it just came to me. It was never a burden or a hassle. Yeah, sure, like it could be difficult from time to time, but I was just, I look back and I was just always comfortable with words, not verbally, but written, if that makes sense. So when I came back to poetry a few years ago and just writing and prose and like researching like different types of literature and writing techniques and things like that, I just, I kind of like found that, that passion again. And it's, I started my poetry Instagram, and I just that was also my first time, that was last year, like sharing my words, because again, I don't really share my writing as often or as much as I do now, or I didn't back then. So it's become very, like, one of the themes in my book is like self-growth, and I think that this was very essential to my own self-growth, because I think it's kind of helped me be a little bit more open, be a little more vocal, and it's also helped me do what I want to do. By being open, I don't mean to like shove my diagnosis down anyone's throat or anything like that, but I do know, like, how lonesome it feels. It still feels like, I have my close friends know, people who follow me on Instagram know, anyone who buys my book will know.
Absolutely.
But it's not a very widely understood diagnosis, I still feel, and people would argue. So I do. I've met, like, or spoken to a few people online who, have also said, wow, I have this too, and I don't know anybody in my life who has this. And, that's kind of what I want to come out of, like, the openness and the vulnerability that I try and, like, show in my writing, is like, if it reaches the right people, or not even the right people, because what's the right person? Just if it reaches someone that it needs to, or that benefits from it in any way,
Then
that would be great.
Your work is done.
Because in 2017, I didn't have that, like, I had my therapist, bless her, of course, but that was it, like,
Yeah.
I didn't, and in the end, when I thought things were going so great, she was like, well, you need something else, something better, something more.
Totally.
So even when I thought I was in a good spot, apparently, I wasn't in the best spot, right? And that's really hard. So for me, writing kind of helped me kind of cope with that in a healthy way, right? Because there's very many not so healthy coping mechanisms that I've done, that I do, that people try in order to kind of navigate and live with whatever mental or cognitive or physical illness that they suffer with or live with. And writing for me was like a safe one. And one that I think could help other people, which is what I want to do, without, like, making anyone uncomfortable, or, like,
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. So that actually is a really great segue to this question. So it is mental health awareness. And so we've talked about all of May. We're almost there to the end of May. And I just want to ask you, so what is your favorite way to take care of your mind?
I don't know that I have a favorite way, but I do know that first of all, mental health for me does not exist when I'm in California. I am just happy. Now, I can't do that on the daily. So I guess realistically, I settle for, whatever. We do what we can. Anyways, I think my favorite way to kind of take care of my mind is just to keep myself busy, if that makes sense. And I don't mean busy like work wise. Like, I really like to feel like I'm being productive. And by that I mean, like, there are times where I want to do things for myself, but I don't have the energy, or I don't have the time. When I say, I want to take this day to myself, I don't mean like take a nap, or maybe I do mean take a nap, but on top of that, like, I like very like the best about myself when I'm being, like, productive, whatever that means for me on that day.
Got it.
So, like, today, literally, I just wanted to keep my mind busy while staying relaxed. And today I was like, you know what? Today's a Sunday. It's a quiet day. I'm going to be home alone for the most part. I'm going to do a few word searches because I love words. I'm going to watch a documentary, not because I want to drown in TV, but, like, I haven't seen TV in, like, a while.
Totally.
And I like watching certain things, right?
Same.
So I'm going to take an hour to watch TV because I want to. I'm going to walk my dog 3 times like I'm supposed to.
Aww.
And I'm going to do a little bit of writing because I haven't written anything new in over a week, and that just feels unnatural to me, right?
Absolutely.
And that to me is productive. But I'm keeping myself busy, my mind busy. I feel, when I'm at my lowest point, or when I'm having like when I'm in the throes of like a depressive episode, I am the opposite. And it one of the things that really, really gets to me is like feeling stagnant, right? Feeling stuck in whatever aspect, stuck at work, stuck in when I was a student, stuck in a degree that I wasn't really enjoying, or stuck with dealing with a personal issue that I can't seem to get a grasp on. Stuck, right? I just don't. I can't. I still have not found a way to handle that that feeling, that fear. So to me, the best way, aside from being in Cali, is being in nature, being outside, even if it's just my backyard, because I just feel so good when I'm like under the sun or like amidst like flowers and trees. I'm like a different person when I'm in nature specifically, and just keeping busy, whatever that means to me. Like I'm not a fan of like people who just don't stop,
For
right?
sure.
Because you have to.
Totally.
You have to sometimes. But some days for me, walking my dog and like reading 30 pages of a book and watching one movie, that's enough.
Yes.
That's what I wanted to do. That kept my mind active. That kept my day going. And that kept me distracted. So for me, it's like, a way to keep my mind feeling good is feeling like I'm getting things done for me, whatever that looks like on that day. I don't feel good doing all the things that I'm telling myself I have to do. I just do them.
Isn't that something, Leisly? She just tackled so much there. I mean, I can relate to this in so many ways. I can relate to it when I don't have energy, when I don't want to go work out. There's always something that's missing. There's always something that you feel like there's too much you have to tackle on. There's too much you have to do. So what it sounds like me too, when you were sharing how you like to take care of your mind, you like active stimulation. And we all should do that to a certain extent too. I think it's beautiful what you touched on. I mean, you all know I love nature. Nature is my saving grace. I don't know what I would be without nature. And I also like to keep myself active and stimulated. And I think that the mind also loves it when you do that too. And so thank you so much for sharing how you take care of your mind. I think we're going to end off. I don't want to end off, but to end off, why don't you read me one of your poems? Maybe it could be a favorite poem from your book. Let's hear from you.
In the span of the 2 years that I wrote this book, so just 2 years, I went through various phases. And I took that opportunity to be like, well, like everyone kind of goes through all those phases, or not all those, the specific phases that I went through, but like everyone kind of goes through changes and challenges and grows and like setbacks and forward you move backwards. So one of the themes, I'm trying to find the piece exactly. One of the themes in my book is phases and how we like move through them. And so I did write a piece specifically about that. Okay. So this is one that I wrote. My book is separated into 3 different chapters, and the last chapter, as in like 3 different phases, you could picture it as, and then the last chapter or phase that I write about is dedicated more so to healing and like self-growth and like honoring yourself, and it's called so like I said, my book is bilingual, so I translate the title chapters. And this one, it's called In This Phase We Heal. In Spanish, that's stated as En esta fase nos sanamos. So this piece is in this last chapter, and it goes, I am like the moon. I exist in phases. Tonight, incomplete, flawed, a work in progress. Tomorrow, I take on a new shape and shatter what was to make room for what is to be. For I have learned that self-growth, consistency. So that's that one.
Oh my gosh, I love, 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 love. Thank you, Leisly, for being here. Thank you for gracing us with your knowledge and your vulnerability and your honesty and your grace and your love. You can follow Leisly on social
at _literary hope.
Perfect.
On Instagram.
On Instagram.
And there's a little Google Doc in my bio where you can order my book, and I personalize them for everyone. I won't tell you what that means, so you get a cute little surprise book mail, but a lot of love and personalization goes into all the orders. So it's better than Amazon, I'm just saying.
Hey, you heard it here first. Oh, Leisly, I will talk to you so soon. Thank you so much again for your beautiful words and your overall honesty on everything in your life. I love you. I thank you. We all thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you for having me and for letting me talk a little bit about me and my book and OCD. Mental health is such a passion for me, something I'm really close to. It's in my work, like my professional work. It's in my writing. It's just always at the forefront of a lot of what I do. So it's this month is important to me, but I really hope that all your listeners especially make an effort to kind of prioritize mental health past May, because it's such an important thing and something that I think if we let it, take a back seat, it can really spiral into something that really is difficult to deal with. So, and I don't want to see that for anyone. So I hope everyone has a beautiful rest of their day. Thank you, Isla, for inviting me. I love you, and everyone should love you. Everyone listen to the rest of her podcast episodes. I'm a little behind, but I'll catch up because that's what I do, catch up, as I just talked about.
Love you.
I love you.
I really hoped you enjoyed this conversation. It was such a joy to have Leisly on Renew Your Soul. As always, don't forget to rate, review, or subscribe to this podcast. It lets me know which episodes you are loving and which ones you want to hear more of. I hope you have a really beautiful and aligned week ahead. And don't forget to continue to think of ways you can take care of your mind as we move on through the rest of this year. Your beautiful mind deserves it. Talk soon.